Punisher's War Journal. Today I killed 17 mafioso, 8 members of the Yakuza, 14 inner-city gangbangers, and most of the WWE Raw booking committee. And yet somehow, I feel empty. The other heroes don't like me. They won't let me in on any free television series or any of the big-budget movies. The best I can do is to guest star in the second season of a streaming service show about a blind lawyer. On top of all this, Hugh Jackman refuses to return my phone calls. He's mad about a Wolverine appearance from over 15 years ago. Well, I see my 10 o'clock is here. Time to put away the War Journal and break out the Punisher's log. Enjoy the show. Hi everyone, welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek. And it's a glorious new era, the era of 60 frames per second. At last I can appear lifelike. Well, sort of. Today's review features two of the hottest stars Marvel has, the Punisher and Wolverine, in what could well be considered one of their worst crossovers. Drawn by Derek Robertson and written by the always controversial Garth Ennis, this is The Punisher, issues 16 and 17. The Punisher's ready to do what he does best, but when Frank knocks open the door of a mob hangout, he only finds a bunch of sawed-off legs. At another bar, some thugs make the mistake of spilling Wolverine's beer. "Hey, you don't mess with the knucklehead," says Logan. A man in the back mentions that he wants him, but as a fight breaks out, Wolverine begins slicing his way through bikers, but the man who made the short insult gets gassed. Logan looks behind the bar and finds another pair of severed legs. A gangster named Grigio wakes up to find himself among a group of men who have had their legs cut off. In fact, he's their latest victim. He threatens his unseen mutilators, but is confronted by another mobster named Paulie, now wearing foot caps on his stumps and dressed like a gnome. Frank checks in with a contact and finds out that the mutilations are part of a pattern, and it's possible the criminals getting cut down to size are still alive. Frank stakes out a mob-controlled strip club. He suspects this is vigilante justice, and when he hears the music inside go louder than normal, runs in waving his shotgun around. He finds everyone tranked and a blood trail leading to the basement. As Logan self-narrates in the sewers while tracking the thugs by their smell, Frank finds some old Prohibition bootlegger tunnels. However, he also finds that the kidnappers' footprints are child-sized. Professor, without knowing what's behind this rash of child-sized crimes, would you say the safest thing our viewers could do is to brutally beat up every child they come across? Yes, I would, Geek. Thank you. The two anti-heroes finally run into each other in a warehouse, with the Punisher blowing off Wolverine's face. Logan gets a few stabs in as the Mastermind watches. He's a fan of both men and wishes they would work for him. A baseball bat to the groin stuns Logan. Frank starts dousing him with gasoline when the Mastermind panics and orders his men into the warehouse. On the loudspeaker, the Mastermind orders them to stand down. They will not be hurt if they don't resist. The two men are surrounded by an army of little people? Hi. After long and fruitful talks with Mr. Balthazar Forsyth, head of the Little Persons Anti-Defamation League, I'm proud to say that at no point during this broadcast will we refer to the vertically challenged in a derogatory way. Not the M word, not the D word, and certainly not the other M word. You know the one. Thank you, Mr. Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr. Geek.
And I'd like to again apologize for not having an adjustable tripod. With claws and baseball bat, the duo start attacking the high-challenged persons. The voice commands that the heroes not be killed as the little people swarm over the heroes. It's then we meet the Mastermind, Tony Casino. The Punisher killed his brother Tommy, the last Mafia Don, which he's grateful for. He's taken over and sawed off the legs of the normal-sized mafioso as revenge. Tommy was embarrassed to have Tony as a brother, and even though Tony loved Tommy, he became the butt of numerous practical jokes and learned to hate his brother. So he gathered like-minded little people, those sick of being ridiculed, and made his own gang. He brings out Paulie in his gnome costume. They capture the mafioso, cut off their legs, and dress them in humiliating outfits. They'll serve as a sort of second-class slave to the new mob. They'll learn what it's like to be laughed at. Tony expects them to join him. After all, the Punisher wants the mob off the streets just like they do, and Wolverine is practically one of them. Hell, Frank tells Logan that they might be the only people around here shorter than him. Logan goes into a rage with the Punisher capping his claws on one of the little people. They both get free, and Tony orders them killed. Wolverine realizes Frank was just saying that to get him to a rage so they'd fight their way free. He's wondering what they should do next, and the Punisher blows his genitals off. Logan's a hindrance, and he needs him out of the way.
Ooh. Much like yawning, there's an unconscious physical response that all men must engage in when they see another man endure genital trauma. I encourage you to join me in that motion now to offer you the relief that the unconscious half of your brain is craving. Simply turn to the side 45 degrees, cover your genitals with your hands, and go, ooh. Thank you.
As the mini-mob searches the warehouse, Frank begins picking them off. He doesn't want to replace the mob, he wants them dead. All of them. Period. As they hold Logan down, Tony tries to saw his legs off, but the adamantium bones just destroy the chainsaw. As the Punisher chases off the rest of this miniature mob, Tony orders them back in, not realizing those holding down Wolverine have also left. Logan cuts Tony's legs off. He crawls to the bootlegger tunnels as Frank returns to a pissed-off Logan. He hears a gun being cocked, but it's just Paulie, who's decided to kill himself. Frank drops a grenade in the hole, finishing off Tony. Logan promises to slice and dice the Punisher for what he's done, and Frank knows he'll need a head start against Logan's tracking and healing factor, so he drives a bulldozer over him and parks it on top of the screaming mutant. He starts to leave when he remembers something. He finds the legless mafioso and readies his gun. Some would say they've suffered enough. Not Frank.
Normally, this is the part of the show where I ask you in some humorous or colorful way if the comic was good or bad. Like, did this book claw past my expectations, or was it a little bad? Screw that. These issues sucked. Here's why.
Garth Ennis was part of that 90s boom of British writers coming over to American comic books. Guys like Mark Millar, Warren Ellis, and Grant Morrison. They made their bones in the comic book industry by writing brash, in-your-face stories that grabbed your attention with over-the-top sexuality, violence, and mythologies. And then there's Garth Ennis. He's not a bad writer by any means, but he doesn't like superheroes. I'm not sure whether or not the editors forced him to use Wolverine, but these two issues are basically a hate letter to everyone's favorite Canadian mutant. Ennis would go on to write, well, if not better, more prolific superhero deconstruction stories in The Boys. He had a long run on The Punisher, and I think he was successful in that because he could use the over-the-top violence, but still keep it grounded in reality. The Punisher is just a man. Wolverine is an unstoppable killing machine. Ennis didn't like that. So Logan, long noted for his short stature and healing factor, is put in a story where those things become his liabilities. On top of that, the worst part is Logan's non-stop narrating to himself, and the fact that it's written in a very over-the-top Canadian accent. Allow me to demonstrate. I guess you had to make that crack back there to get me blood up, and it looks like you ain't been cutting no legs off after all. But heck, next time you decide to make a break for it, how about letting the old knucklehead know in advance? Trust me, Wolverine has never called himself the knucklehead in any book. For these two issues, Wolverine has turned into an unlikable schmuck. Honestly, the little people in this book get more respect. You at least get an idea of how abuse can sour any relationship from love to hate and resentment. And how it's no fun being the butt of everyone's jokes simply because you were born a little different. As for the Punisher himself, he's a bit of a cipher. He's just there to narrate these stories and go on his killing sprees. I haven't read any of Ennis's other Punisher works, but he had a long run with this character, so I suppose he's doing something right. I have no complaints about the art. Derek Robertson does a good job of illustrating the Punisher, and especially the ridiculous things that happen to Logan. He's a master of facial expression and would go on to illustrate most of The Boys with Garth Ennis. But overall, this story is just hard to get through, with how unlikable Logan is and how sympathetic the villains are. There's not really a hero to root for in this comic, but maybe that's what Garth Ennis wanted all along.
Overall, if you're not a Wolverine fan, you might like this more than I did, which is to say, you might actually like this. I give The Punisher, issues 16 and 17, 1 out of 5 stars. There's a fine line between punishment and abuse, and I feel like Garth Ennis crossing a line by taking someone we all like and just refusing to play ball. This was Ennis trolling Wolverine fans before we even knew what trolling meant. This is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek.